Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Business License Basics. My name is Annie Triboletti, and I will be your moderator. Joining us today are Brian Bartnicki and Calla Heathman. Brian is the Senior Business License Sales Engineer at the forefront, assisting customers with their industry-specific requirements, which range from research, portfolio management, and renewal services. Brian has worked with CSC for more than a decade, offering his expertise in the field of license compliance. Calla is a sales engineer that supports the Corporate Legal Services Group at CSC and is based in Wilmington, Delaware. Since joining CSC in 2015, Calla has focused on business-to-business relationship management and consulting to find solutions that best fit the needs of new clients. And with that, let's welcome Brian and Calla.
Thank you, Annie. Calla and I would like to thank everybody for joining the webinar this afternoon. Before we begin, I do want to go over the agenda for what we are going to cover for today's session. First, we're going to briefly talk about who we are as an organization from an Incorporate.com and CSC perspective. We're then going to dive into what we mean actually by business licenses. The term is very ambiguous in the world of compliance. And we get a lot of questions that are asked to us over and over again, sort of in different capacities. So we really want to dive into how that's defined in the compliance world. We're then going to talk to some common questions that we hear from many companies, whether it's how they uncover what's required or how they go through filings, things of that nature. And then we're going to dive into consequences, things that could potentially occur if you fail to have the appropriate licenses that are related to your business. And then we're going to conclude with diving into how CSC can help in the license world. And then we're going to leave time at the end for a Q&A for any of you that would like to ask any questions. But before we dive into the meat of the webinar, I do want to highlight some information about who we are, again, at CSC, Incorporate.com. With CSC, we've been around since 1899. So we've been around for literally 2 millennium and 3 centuries. So we're very proud of that. We're not going anywhere. We are a privately held organization. We have over 2,500 employees worldwide, all across the globe, many, many offices. And we represent different types of companies, small sole proprietorships, medium-sized companies, large organizations, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000. Many of our customers are law firms, financial institutions, and we do many other things. We offer domain services and other compliance services as well. So we are truly the business behind business when it comes to compliance. So anything you can think about behind the scenes when it comes to corporate governance and compliance, just know that CSC is there for you. And again, we greatly appreciate your time and hope that you find value in the webinar today.
And thanks for giving us some insight about CSC, Brian. We really wanted to start out by understanding what we mean when we speak about business licenses. So as Brian mentioned, by definition, business license can be a very vague term. It truly means many different things across companies and filing authorities. But to us here at CSC, business licenses are requirements that fall outside of the Secretary of State jurisdiction. So we're not talking about things such as formations, qualifications, or annual reports. But really in our world, we're speaking about anything that's going to be locally driven or specific to your industry. So now you might be asking yourself, what should I be looking for? When we're understanding what licenses are required for your business, you might see terms such as occupational, tax receipt, privilege tax, professional, and these are really just some of the most common terms that you can run into when looking at licensing from different local levels where you're operating or things like that. As mentioned, there could also be some different industry-specific requirements that apply to you. If you own a food truck, you might need a milk or dairy permit. If you are in the construction world, you might need a contractor's license or maybe even an engineering license. If you're selling different products or reselling them, you could potentially need a reseller's permit. And these are really just only a few examples that come up in terms of industry-specific licenses. But there's so many industries and different locations across the U.S. that it can certainly be difficult to navigate all of the requirements. To make things worse, there are over 150,000 filing authorities that could issue some type of license and impact your business.
So one of the sort of things that Calla and I hear very frequently when companies are either starting, maybe they're brand new, or even if they've been in business for just a few years, or even 5-10 years, sometimes they don't know what they need as it pertains to their business. And when it comes to that, there's some questions. The question that I hear most often is, how do I know what applies to me? So, for example, somebody might be in a collection agency, but they might do passive debt buying. They might think that they need a collection license when they may not need a collection license. Some of you might be a subcontractor. You might be doing work, maybe roofing, maybe residential contracting, and you're not sure if you need a general contractor's license. Some of you in the hospitality world, maybe you're going to open, you have a restaurant, and you're not sure if you require an outside cafe license to have seating outside. There's so many different types of industries, but it's really the true uncertainty, because it's not just what you're doing, it's how you're doing it. And not just how you're doing it, it's where are you doing it. Calla mentioned that there's over 150,000 governing authorities across America, and it's not just city, county, state. In some places, such as Pennsylvania and New Jersey, you might even run to townships, boroughs, villages. Some places like Alabama, you may just physically drive your vehicle through it, and they think that in their world, that's constituting business. So what truly applies to you? And those are really the biggest question that I get from customers in all industries most frequently. And everyone on the phone or everyone on the webinar today, I'm sure, has many responsibilities, whether it's financial accounting on your company. Maybe you're in sales. Maybe you're in legal. Maybe you're in physical tax compliance. You probably don't have the time to really spend and to research what applies to you, all the laws, the ordinances, everything from all levels of government that truly applies to your business. It's the true unknown, and it's something that's incredibly, incredibly challenging.
So it's absolutely challenging to understand what you may need or what applies to your business in terms of licenses, but the challenge does not stop there, which leads us into our key question that we hear, again, our second step, all of the time. Once you know what you need, how do you get them or how do you move forward? So the common problem that we come across is really, how do you even get applications for these licenses that you find? Do you have to do more research? Do you have to visit your local offices? Do you have to, log into a portal, something like that? Or once you have those applications, are they really clear about everything else that is required to go along with that license? Is there supporting documents that you need to provide? Maybe in the construction world, you might need a bond. But how do you find out how much that bond needs to be for? Or do you need to provide a certificate of good standing, and where can you get that? And these are just some common questions that come along when going through that application process. We also might not know what costs are associated with the license. And really just instructions themselves could be unclear about how to submit that license. So it's absolutely not uncommon to face these types of problems while you're trying to go through that application and filing process. And as we know, the challenges along the way, they still don't stop. So which leads us into our third step, and understanding once you have what you need, how do you move forward with the management of that? So what do you do? I would say, again, you finally figure out what licenses you need, and you get them, you have the copies, but now you're faced with the maintenance behind those. So what do you do with the copies that you have now? Do you have to store it in a certain place? Do you have posting measures? Did your licenses come with instructions? Do you know where to put it? Then on top of that, when's your renewal? Is it something that could be perpetual, or do you have to file something again every year, every other year? And as Brian mentioned, when you are moving into other places or you have multiple locations, it gets increasingly harder to understand what you need, but it also gets increasingly harder to maintain and follow all of the renewals there. Every license is going to have a different requirement, which definitely makes it hard to have a uniform maintenance fashion behind your licenses. Now with that, I'll turn it back over to Annie to take us through a poll question.
Thank you, Calla. So folks, throughout our presentation today, you will see some poll questions appear on your screen, and we invite you to participate in them so that we can learn a little bit more about you and your business license needs, or where you might be in your process today. So on your screen, you should see our first question that is asking, where have you experienced challenges through the license process? There's a number of answers on your screen available. You could select one of them, or you could select all of the above at the bottom. So please take a moment to make your selections. And while you're doing that, I will tap into our presenter's knowledge base here. So Brian, based on what you hear from people all the time, and based on the options that are on the screen for everybody, which of these do you think will be the most popular response amongst our audience today?
I think it's going to be the researching license requirements, just off of everyone's wearing multiple hats and the sheer unknown, where to go. I think that's probably going to be the most popular. And then second, I would probably say just really filing for the licenses, whether it be new or renewals. I think those would be the most common answers.
Great, thank you for that. So we'll take a look and see what the results are saying. And it actually is a very close tie, almost, between researching and permit requirements and all of the above for taking the top spot. Although we've got answers for each of these options, so we really appreciate everyone taking the time to fill out that poll for us.
So we've covered a lot of problems and questions that companies just like yours experience on a daily basis when it comes to licensing, but we really want to focus on why it's important to make sure that you have everything that you need and that all of those licenses and permits stay current. So we're going to review some of the consequences of not staying compliant. Our first repercussion would be fines and penalties. If you're operating without a license or your license expires, you can absolutely incur financial penalties that will far surpass the cost of getting that license or even just maintaining it to begin with. I had been previously working with a client that was operating in Alabama, and they accidentally let their license lapse. However, they did not cease operation, and they actually incurred a $70,000 penalty for that length of time that they had been operating without a license or with an expired license. And when looking back on it, the fine actually ended up being 350 times the original amount of the license renewal. So it's really important to understand that these fines and penalties aren't just a one-time thing. They can absolutely look back on how long you've been doing business there, and there can be additional repercussions versus just that one-time fee. And all in all, staying in compliance can actually save you money in the long run. Along with those fines, you can face lawsuits and legal judgments if you're conducting business without the appropriate licenses and permits. Again, along with that, it'll tie right back into fines and penalties. You will incur them, and it's just something that isn't great when you're operating unlawfully. And then a lot of companies can also face the harsh reality of having to shut their doors and close their business, whether it's something that happens temporarily until you can comply with the regulations, or if it's something that becomes permanent from all of those other factors. It's definitely not something that any business owner would want to experience. So having the appropriate licenses and permits in place at all times really will help mitigate that from happening.
One of the most extreme examples that sometimes seems just unbelievable and can't be true, but it is, would be actually arrests. Sometimes, companies, believe it or not, if they're shut down or they are neglecting to be licensed appropriately, people within locations can be arrested, and then business closure would, of course, ensue thereafter. But it's a way for governing authorities to obtain some type of collateral to really understand that they're taking it seriously, and they want businesses to be compliant, as it pertains to those rules and regulations. There's a sort of a true story that I had gotten from a client. This happened about 2 years ago, where a former employee at a retail location used to manage a particular store, and they actually left the business. They left the company. They got a new job. The location actually was negligent in renewing the license for quite some time, and the former employee was actually driving on a highway and got pulled over for a speeding ticket. And this individual was actually the person of responsibility listed on the license for her former employer. And there was, so because of that, and there was a warrant out for her arrest, and she was actually arrested for a license from her former employer. And she ended up having to sue her former employer, which incurred actual fines, penalties, lawsuits, pretty much everything that was related to these prior consequences, all for simply just neglecting to file a license for their location for many years. So it's a very real thing. Some other items that come into play for those of you in the trade world, maybe you're in construction, architecture, engineering, you're looking to bid on opportunities. Some of you, I don't know if you've ever come across this, but many times the business is moving quickly and you need to have a license yesterday, but you're unable to get a temporary license. A lot of governing authorities or a lot of businesses that you're trying to win or sell to, if it's in a new jurisdiction, maybe you can't physically do the work until you have a license that's going to be required for you to be compliant in that jurisdiction, whether it's a general contractor's license, maybe it's a local license. It can really prevent you from bidding on opportunities or really expanding into new markets if you're not taking that proactive approach and understanding what's required. Any of you that are in the manufacturing world, distribution, supply, you might run it warehousing. If you're ever, distributing items and you're going into a new market potentially, and you don't have something licensed appropriately, you may not be able to actually distribute or do that work because it can't be introduced into the new market. So just keep in mind, again, these are things that might not be on, you think about immediately, but just know you could run into issues when it comes to launching. And your reputation, negative press. Your reputation as an organization, no matter who you are, whether you're a sole proprietor or you have your own franchise, whether you're a middle-sized company or a large company, your reputation is everything. The last thing you want to do if you're a restaurant, right, is maybe miss to renew your health permit, or something happens and you fail to schedule an inspection, or maybe you're in DC and you fail to post a license, and the inspector comes and closes your location. You don't want other consumers to see that you're closed due to some other licensing violation. Sometimes it could be taken to the extreme. It could have a negative effect on that consumer coming back to your business in any capacity. And we really want to ensure that it does not happen at any given time. So with that, I do want to turn it over to Annie to go over the next poll question.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. So folks, we have another poll question that will appear on your screen in just a second. This one is asking you how you're managing your business licenses today, whether you're using an actual physical filing cabinet, you might track them on Excel, maybe you're waiting for the jurisdiction to remind you that your licenses are due, or you're doing something a little different and posting a reminder on the wall or on your desk. So please take a moment to make a selection based on how you are currently managing your licenses. And while you're doing that, I will ask Calla what she thinks will be the most popular response here.
Thanks, Annie. I definitely think that we'll see a lot of responses for waiting for jurisdictional reminders. And then also, if you have quite a few licenses or maybe have been in business for a while, you're probably resulting to your Excel spreadsheet.
Great, thanks for that insight, Calla. And we will take a look and see what the audience had to say. Calla, today must be a good day for you and your guessing game. Well, most people said wait for the jurisdiction to remind them.
Okay. Well, we went over some questions, concerns, and absolutely those consequences behind licenses. So we really want to focus now on how CSC can tackle those types of uncertainties for your business through our CSC licensing services. Earlier, we had identified really three main steps in a license process through different types of questions that you might ask yourself along the way. So to start with step one and refer back to that question about what licenses apply to my company and what licenses apply to me. So CSC has research services that can absolutely help you answer that question. If you have just started your business, maybe you've expanded your footprint or even have plans to do so, we have a type of research that we would consider new location research that will uncover all of the license requirements that are related to your specific business activities, and we'll find these on a state, city, and as Brian mentioned, those county or local municipality levels that could have a different type of filing authority. So this research package will encompass anything that could be general in nature, just to operate as a business within those different locations, or anything industry specific that will apply directly to your business and the business activities. We also have a separate research package for any locations that you already have pre-existing. So we consider that existing location research. This package will do the same to understand your requirements. However, we'll take it a little bit of a step further to mind the gaps of the licenses that you already have and find anything that could be missing. And then also looking at what you have, but maybe identifying things that you don't necessarily need. And we research this based on information that you provide to us through industry-specific questionnaires and other questions that we might ask about the business. We then report back our findings to you. So answering those questions about all the uncertainty behind the application process, instructions, fees, and anything of that nature. Our report will come with all of the applications that you could possibly need for the licenses that apply to you, further instructions on how to complete them, if there's anything supporting that you need to supply, different types of fee schedules related to those licenses, and any additional information that will absolutely help you tackle that next step of getting what you need.
And some of the other questions that we talked about, right, were pertaining to where do I file, how do I go about doing it, and then the actual maintenance of those. And that really falls directly into the capstone of CSC's offering, which is the management and the renewal of the service. We would actually give you a dedicated contact here at CSC. That individual would be responsible for managing your account. You would receive notifications from us whenever we were renewing your licenses 60 days in advance. Your dedicated contact would proactively obtain all the necessary applications. You would not have to worry about sending anything to them, because we would change the mailing address for all notices and renewals to come here to our headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware. After we prepared the license, we would use a filing questionnaire that you would complete. We'd have a profile with that information. We would then go ahead and, after preparation, we would also pay the governing fee and submit that on your behalf. And then when we get the license back, we would go ahead and upload it into your account. There's going to be, which I'll talk to in a little bit, the actual online portfolio. So you always will have transparency into your licenses. We'll archive the historical ones. And then we'll send the original licenses to your offices with posting instructions. So that way, make sure we're letting you know when things have to be posted. You don't have to, again, worry about the unknown of getting a violation for something as minor as that. So just know that we will actually give you the ability to have a total transparent view of what we're doing. And if you have other services with us, it's going to just be a separate section within your existing CSC account. And, I mentioned you will have a portfolio. It's a digital platform. You have access to it 24/7. You can have as many users as you would like. But with that notification I mentioned, you will always receive those alerts. You'll get a report knowing what we are handling that you have coming due. And it's really going to eliminate the unknown. You don't have to worry about getting those fines and those penalties, because you'll always have peace of mind. That CSC is in turn your partner in crime, right? The business behind business in helping you through that endeavor.